All right, Genesis 18. Let's call this one Partner for now. I'm not completely sure this is the best title because a lot of my attention has been geared toward the shootings that recently happened in Texas that in a lot of ways seem to be a part of a news cycle that has tragedy chasing scandal, chasing tragedy. And if there is an upside to it, it's caused me to go back almost daily and reevaluate my perspective on what I studied each day. But the upside is that each day the word still seems to apply to what's going on each day as it unfolds. And I want to be careful not to impose my perspective on what I think is a connection between Genesis 18 and what we've recently seen. But I think it does apply in this way. And that's as I look at tragedies, not only like this, but tragedies all over the globe. Sometimes in places where they can't name the difference between a Republican and a Democrat, I see this similarity. And that's on one side of a tragedy, we'll have Christians who are suffering. And on the other side of the tragedy, we will likewise have Christians who are either directly or indirectly helping to cause the suffering of another Christian. And here we've talked about it in the sense of there are places torn by civil wars. And on both sides of those conflicts, you will see Christians suffering and Christians helping to perpetrate that suffering. And it seems that in the States, we are in a lot of ways not above that same dilemma. Why? We say it like this. It's that evil is often tailored to fit my particular blind spots and my particular weaknesses. And so I may be able to see quite clearly the way in which one Christian is participating in the suffering of another, but I might not be able to see the way the enemy has deceived me into doing the same thing. And that's one of the reasons why understanding God and his wisdom is so important, is because he's seen all the traps, as we've said before, and he can help me out of situations where I either see or don't see the ways in which I'm participating in another Christian's suffering. And why is that so important? Because in Genesis chapter 18, Abraham is once again trying to intercede for Lot. And he's not able to do it on the basis of, wait, you're going down to Sodom and Gomorrah to destroy the city. My cousin lives there. You got to save my cousin. God doesn't play favorites that way. He's going to deal with an issue in Sodom and Gomorrah. And if Lot is wrapped up in that issue, he may get dealt with as well. And so Abraham appeals to God's sense of righteousness, asking a simple question: God, will you sweep away the righteousness with the wicked in the destruction that's ahead? And he convinces God, or gets God to agree, that even though he's not going to save Sodom and Gomorrah, he is going to save the righteous he finds there. And it's so similar to what we see in the New Covenant, because God doesn't promise to save us simply because we claim to know Christ. It matters whether or not, much like Lot, we have partnered in the evil that he is coming back to deal with. Why? Because in dealing with evil, he's not just trying to cause more suffering just by stamping out people who should have known better. No, he's providing relief from the suffering that evil causes. And so he says, as believers, you got to realize that you can't partner in evil and expect a different consequence than the people he's coming back to deal with. Ultimately, when people look outside the church at us and see the times in which we can say, oh, wait, I know Christ, and expect to simply be blessed at his return, even though we're partnering with some very evil things, they think it's strange, rightfully so, because God thinks it's strange too, because he never promised to bless us as a result of partnering with evil things, especially evil things that harm other Christians. How do we know? Romans talks about this in a list of sins that God says he's coming back to bring people relief from. And he says, if we partner in those sins, skipping down to verse 32 of chapter 31, of chapter 1, verse 32 of chapter 31. Skipping down to verse 32 of chapter 1. Though they know God's decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. He says something else in chapter 2 that's similar. He says, for as it is written, the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. Why? Because it's that principle of saying, oh, just because I know Christ, I'm saved. No, what you're doing to either encourage more evil or to help provide relief from evil has everything to do with the reward that you can expect from God. Why? In Ephesians, he says much the same thing in a famous passage in chapter 5, verse 6. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things, the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not become partners with them. And likewise, in future judgment in the Revelation, he says, come out of her, my people, in chapter 18, because you don't want to share in her sins and likewise her condemnation. And so as believers, We need to be very conscious, to be honest with ourselves about the times in which we need God to help us to see ways in which we might be actually causing other Christians harm.